Remember the TV show Father Knows Best? Sociologists say children really want to believe that. The trouble begins about the time they reach pre-adolescence and discover that we, as human parents, aren't perfect. Combine our imperfections with the sense of idealism that teenagers have, and the mix is right for a few difficult years. Wouldn't it be great to have a perfect father? James Boswell was a famous Scottish lawyer and biographer in the 1700s. Mr. Boswell often referred to a special day in his childhood when his father took him fishing. The day was fixed in his mind, and he often reflected upon the many things his father taught him during their day together. It occurred to someone many years later to check the journal of Boswell's father to determine what had been said from a parental perspective. Turning to the date that was so etched in the young Boswell's mind as the most important day of his life, his father had entered only one sentence: "Gone fishing today with my son, a day wasted." Wouldn't it be great to have a perfect father who loves spending time with us? As parents, we often misinterpret what our children are experiencing. We see the events in their lives from the perspective of an adult, not a child. Even when we try to understand their point of view, we do not always fully comprehend what's happening. That's not good or bad, that's just the way it is. But wouldn't it be great to have a perfect father who loves us and understands what we need? Sometimes as children of God, we don't always understand where God is coming from. We misinterpret what he says. We are confused by his teachings, and we fail to understand how much he really loves us. Chapter 11 of Romans is a reminder that our Heavenly Father really does know best. Now, don't let the examples of this chapter throw you off. The connection between Judaism and Christianity is not something we often think about. And the illustration of an olive branch being grafted into a tree is not something most of us do every day unless you do a lot of gardening. The 11th chapter of the book of Romans is simply telling us that our Father knows best. This is a chapter about how God views our salvation. As mere mortals, we may look at salvation a little differently, but for a few minutes this morning, let's try to understand the mind of God and how he views our salvation. And we will see, I believe, that our Heavenly Father really does know best. First, our Father knows what's best about the individuality of salvation. The individuality of salvation. Now, by individuality of salvation, I don't mean personal salvation. You see, that phrase, personal salvation, has come to mean something the Bible never teaches. It's come to mean that we are saved by ourselves and can worship and grow by ourselves. Rather, the Bible always teaches, how we need each other. And the Bible encourages believers to share together and meet each other's needs. So by individuality, I mean God saves us each individually, or based on what we have done, according to what we know. Look at Romans chapter 11, beginning at verse 1. Romans chapter 11, beginning at verse 1. I ask then, did God reject his people? By no means. I am an Israelite myself, a descendant of Abraham from the tribe of Benjamin. God did not reject his people whom he foreknew. Don't you know what the scripture says in the passage of Elijah, how he appealed to God against Israel? Lord, they have killed your prophets and torn down your altars. I am the only one left, and they are trying to kill me. And what was God's answer to him? I have reserved for myself 7,000 who have not bowed the knee to Baal. So too, at the present time, there is a remnant chosen by grace. And if by grace, then it is no longer by works. If it were, grace would no longer be grace. It's almost as if Paul wrote these words last week, isn't it? You know, every day we read news stories and about how Christians are being persecuted and killed for their faith. It's too easy to think that we're the only ones left. I saw a graph a few years ago showing where Christianity is most oppressed. And it's on the Maldives Island off India. Some 341,000 people live on the island, but the number of Christians can be counted in tens. There are about as many Christians here in this building this morning than there are on that whole island. And what makes it so oppressive is it's legal there to arrest and even kill anyone who, even someone on vacation, even someone just making a connecting flight going somewhere else, if they're carrying a Bible. I wonder if the Christians there think they're the only ones left. The assault on our faith has grown dramatically, even in America. I read about a school in Mississippi that was fined because they invited a preacher to come to the high school and offer a prayer of thanksgiving for the students who made the honor roll. It's common in America to ignore or mock or ridicule Christians. We are often portrayed as either evil or oppressive bigots or bumbling, stumbling fools. Did you know the reason the time change is on a Saturday night is because the government figured that was a time when either losing or gaining hours sleep would affect productivity in people's lives in general the least. Sometimes it can feel as if we are all alone and no one else believes what we believe anymore. And it would be easy to cry like Elijah, I'm the only one left. But just like in the days of Elijah, there is still a remnant. There's still a group of people who are faithful and committed to serving God. Someone once said, no church or nation is saved as a group. And there's a tremendous truth in that. Paul is telling us in our text that there is no such thing as a chosen people like the Israelites have come to believe. You're not saved because of your family, or your culture, or your nation, or your heritage. It's sad, and it will take some getting used to. But it doesn't really matter if America is a Christian nation or not. Because God looks at us as individuals. We need to make sure individually that we are being saved, that we personally are doing what God wants us to do. William Barclay wrote, a man must give his own heart, make his own submission, surrender his own life to God. God does not call men in crowds. The remnant is the body of consecrated, dedicated men and women within the nation. The faith of our fathers cannot save us, but can only show us the way. This morning, think a little bit about your faith. What is it based on? Think about your salvation. Have you, as an individual, accepted Jesus as your Lord and Savior? Have you been obedient to Him in baptism? Our Father knows best. He's not as concerned about saving America as He is concerned about the salvation of each one of us here. Next, our Father knows best about the privilege of salvation. The privilege of salvation, beginning in verse 17 of Romans chapter 11. If some of the branches have been broken off, and you, though a wild olive shoot, have been grafted in among the others, and now share in the nourishing sap from the olive root, do not boast over those branches. If you do, consider this. You do not support the root, but the root supports you. You will say then, branches are broken off so that I could be grafted in. Granted, but they were broken off because of unbelief, and you stand by faith. Do not be arrogant, but be afraid. For if God did not spare the natural branches, He will not spare you either. It came as a shock to me when I lost my job at Lazy Boy years and years ago. I was doing okay. I was the assistant manager. If you walk through that door of the store, seriously looking for a recliner, chances are you would leave with one. I wasn't high pressure, but I knew the product better than anyone else there, and I knew all the colors, all the fabrics, and all the styles that we had to offer. All I had to do was find out what you wanted, and I could find the chair just for you. But when the owner let me go, he said, "You haven't done anything wrong. Whatever I tell you to do, you do. You are the best salesman here. But you act as if you don't care anymore." Well, he was right. You see, I didn't really care about that job. I did not have what politicians call a fire in my belly. I put in my time and no more, and I went home. I forgot that my job was a privilege and not a right. You see, we do that with our salvation sometimes, don't we? We act as if we have the right to salvation. We act as if we are doing God a favor by showing up on Sunday. The truth is, salvation is a privilege, not a right. Or as Paul wrote in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 12, "So if you think you are standing firm, be careful that you don't fall." When my kids turned 16 and got their permits, I told each one of them, driving is a privilege, not a right. If you abuse the privilege, you will lose the right. That's what Paul's telling us about our salvation. Salvation is a privilege, not a right. If you abuse the privilege, you will lose the right. Look at verse 22 of Romans chapter 11. "Consider therefore the kindness and sternness of God. Sternness to those who fell, but kindness to you, provided that you continue in his kindness. Otherwise, you will be cut off." You see, in one verse, Paul manages to destroy the once saved, always saved argument. We cannot do anything to achieve our salvation, but our obedience to God through baptism and serving him now shows our Father that we understand our salvation is a privilege. Jose Cabrero was 21 years old and one of Spain's most brilliant matadors. But in 1985, he made a tragic mistake. He thrust his sword a final time in a bleeding, delirious bull, which collapsed. Considering the struggle finished, Jose turned to the crowd to acknowledge the applause. The bull, however, was not dead, and it rose and lunged at the unsuspecting matador, its horn piercing his back and puncturing his heart. Just when we think we've done enough and have been saved, just when we turn our back to accept the congratulations of the crowd, sin stabs us in the back. We should never consider our salvation complete until we have completed the race. In fact, the phrase "been saved" is not accurate. Our salvation is not something we can point to in the past and say, that was when we were saved. We can say that's when our salvation began. You see, our salvation is an ongoing process in our lives. We are being saved. And if we are being saved, we need to be careful not to consider our salvation a right, but a privilege. It's our privilege today to be working on our salvation. That should change a few things, shouldn't it? Because a privilege can be taken away if we don't use it. A privilege is something we honor, respect, and are proud of. We do everything we can to keep the privilege. Finally, our Father knows best about the mercies of salvation. The mercies of salvation, beginning in verse 23. "And if they do not persist in unbelief, they will be grafted in. For God is able to graft them in again. After all, if you were cut out of an olive tree that is wild by nature and contrary to nature were grafted into a cultivated olive tree, how much more readily will these, the natural branches, be grafted into their own olive tree? I do not want you to be ignorant of this mystery, brothers, so that you may not be conceited. Israel has experienced a hardening in part until the full number of Gentiles has come in. And so all Israel will be saved. As it is written, the deliverer will come from Zion. He will turn godlessness away from Jacob. And this is my covenant with them when I take away their sins. In Psalm 89, verse 1, David wrote, I will sing of the mercies of the Lord forever. So what are the mercies of the Lord? Paul lists at least 3 of them here in chapter 11 of Romans, and they all deal with our salvation. First, the mercy of salvation is that it is open to everyone. God offers salvation to everyone who believes. That becomes the remnant, those who believe. That becomes those who are redeemed. That becomes Israel, those who believe and follow. There is no one alive in this world that cannot have this mercy, because God offers His salvation to everyone who believes. Galatians chapter 3, verse 28 tells us, there is now neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free, male nor female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. Second, God's mercy is seen in His patience. Romans chapter 11, verse 29 says, God's gifts and His call are irrevocable. In other words, He will not change His mind about giving us salvation. And He will never give up on us no matter how bad we treat Him. We should be glad that God does not follow the old saying, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. The nation of Israel had slapped God in the face so much they must have left a red mark. One prophet compared the relationship between Israel and God like a relationship between a husband and wife. And Israel was an unfaithful spouse, preferring the company of prostitutes over God. We all know that Israel was punished for her disobedience, and we know God is a jealous God who will not tolerate sin. But look at this. Romans chapter 11 insists that if Israel would repent, God would take them back. How many of us would take back a cheating spouse? In fact, we like to justify divorce by saying adultery is the only acceptable reason for divorce. Yet, here we see Israel cheated on God. They committed spiritual adultery. But God will take them back. And, more importantly for us, He will take you back if you've wandered away from Him. As long as we are alive in this world, if we would repent and come back to Him, He will take us back. No matter how bad we are, no matter what we did, He will take us back. Finally, God's mercy of salvation tells us that He is in control. Romans chapter 11, verses 33 through 36 are actually just words of poetry, but they express through this worship the awesome power of God. Beginning of verse 33. Oh, the depth of the riches of the wisdom and knowledge of God. How unsearchable His judgments, and His path beyond tracing out. Who has known the mind of the Lord, or who has been His counselor? Who has ever given to God that God should repay him? For from Him and through Him and to Him are all things. To Him be the glory forever. Amen. Remember the old bumper sticker that said, God is my co-pilot? That sounds nice, but the theology is all wrong. Yes, God is the pilot, but we are just the passengers. You see, a co-pilot can help the pilot do his job. A co-pilot can fly the plane when the pilot cannot. A co-pilot can help the pilot. We are not God's co-pilots. We're just passengers. When my son J.D. was 4 years old, we were at a swimming pool, and I offered to take him to the shallow end. He refused, and he sat on the side just watching. Well, after a while, he decided that we were all having a pretty good time in the water, but instead of asking me to help him get in, he stood up and walked right off the edge by himself. I looked over, and there he was, bobbing up and down, trying to get to safety. And I rushed over and I picked him up, and he learned he could not go into the pool unless someone took him. Likewise, we cannot receive salvation unless God helps us. Otherwise, we will bob up and down in our sea of good works, and eventually drown. Because we cannot save ourselves. Only God can do that. Our